Hey, I'm Brad.
And I'm Kelly, and we are the Connections Coordinators here at RCOG.
And you're listening to the Living Room Podcast. This is a podcast about the stories and testimonies of people in our church.
We hope you enjoy.
Well, welcome to the Living Room Podcast. My name is Brad, and I am here with my wife, Kelly. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
So the purpose of what we're doing today is really just to give the listener, or the viewer in this case, an idea of what this podcast is going to be about. And so we didn't come up with this name, the Living Room Podcast is what the podcast is going to be called. We didn't come up with that. We had some much more creative people come up with that name. But the Living Room Podcast just kind of stems from the fact that, you know, when you're sitting in a living room
Like this.
yeah. And thanks to Cody and Evan for making it look so great, is that that's where you go and sit down and have conversations. And you just talk about life. You get yourself a nice glass of sweet tea. This is sweet tea, by the way. Or a cup of coffee, which we don't have coffee today because it's 80 degrees outside. But where you just sit down and have conversations about life and really just talk about things like that. Yeah.
And share your story and can be real and honest about, you know, where you've been and where you are now and kind of where you're hoping to go, whatever, even though you may not know or have a clue what's next for you or what God's doing, like to be in somebody's living room, to, you know, be comfortable enough to say, okay, this is really who I am, what I've experienced, and, you know, be seen and known.
If you invite someone into your living room, I mean, that's a little bit more intimate atmosphere, you know, to sit down and have those conversations. And you know, and so this podcast is really just going to be designed to give people opportunities to share their stories in a way that, you know, both helps that person and the listener. You know, Revelation chapter 12, not to make it real spiritual, but it is spiritual. It's completely spiritual in the way God works in our lives. In Revelation 12 and 11, I'm going to read it from the New Living Translation. It says this: "And they have defeated him," talking about the devil, "by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony." And what we've learned and what I've learned, and maybe we'll share more about that later on, is that, you know, being able to speak your story and understand your story, I think really kind of gives freedom and a pathway for the Holy Spirit to really work in our lives and help us understand why we are the way we are.
Yeah, why are you?
Which is your favorite question.
That you are is my favorite thing, and it comes from The Office, but that's my favorite
line. Why are you the way that you are? Yeah.
And I love the fact that the Lord gives us the opportunity to do that, to reflect. Like, He didn't have to give us the ability to do that, you know, if you really think about it, and to be able to remember and to reflect on our story and to notice the things that maybe are patterns or are things that keep showing up, things that kind of feel uncomfortable or things that we're naturally really gifted at. Like, He didn't have to give us the ability to do that, which is, you know, but He did, and He does, and the ability to have a story and to be able to share it, not just for ourselves, but for other people, but also for ourselves, like to say, okay, I'm doing a work. It's not about this right here. I'm about the long game, like I'm about the, you know, the larger, there's something larger going on than just you, but I'm also close and personal to just you too. Right. And that it just kind of.
Yeah. And, you know, getting in the idea of sharing your testimony, sharing your story, it's a little bit deeper than just sharing what has happened to you.
Yeah.
It's, you know, what this podcast and what we want to do through this is really kind of help people not just say, hey, this happened to me, but to be able to say, this is my story and these things happen, but here's what I've discovered. Like and I get emotional, when I think about these things, but because to your point, the Lord doesn't have to reveal the things that he reveals to us. And for me, it's been in those moments of being in a living room type setting where you take the time to reflect and think and dig and have conversations with those closest to you, that the Holy Spirit begins to work and reveal things. And there's so much, I guess, revelation in what he reveals about our story that I think really starts to bring about that healing. And other than just looking at our story as A, B, and C happened to me, well, what do I do with it? And so what we want to do through this and having conversations with people is really give them that opportunity and encourage people to reflect and invite God into, I guess, revealing the parts of your story that matter. And inviting him into those areas of hurt and pain and unforgiveness and bitterness and
joy.
Not to make it all bad.
Things.
And really to see that the overcoming power that the Holy Spirit gives us in that. And so how did all this come about? I think about when we think about the podcast, the Living Room Podcast, and why are we doing it? Where did it come from? Did we just sit around and dream up an idea? One of the things we did right before the podcast is just really kind of pray and really just kind of give all this to the Lord, because the way this has come about has been some really weird things. In my own personal life over the last 4 years, I've kind of started down this journey of really looking at the things that have happened to me. And, Kelly, me and you've had so many conversations around this, and not that there were these major traumatic things that some people do experience, but we all have parts of our story from childhood, from teenage years, that 100% affect who I am, how I process, how I think right now. And in my own journey of just the Lord beginning to work a lot of those things out for me, I have discovered healing beyond. I know it's not me. Like healing, where I know that God has worked these things out in me, and a lot of it is because me and you have sat in a living room type setting and had conversations. And so, the origins of the podcast kind of started with that. And in the midst of all this, probably about 2 years ago, I was at work one day, and this was after work when I had some extra time. I was watching a documentary, and you're probably going to laugh and chuckle when I tell you the documentary. But if you're familiar with the guys Dude Perfect, you know what I'm talking about? Y'all know what I'm talking about? Dude Perfect. So these are Christian guys. They're not ashamed to say that. They have this obviously incredible following on YouTube. And there was this documentary type thing that they did, and I was watching them. They were sitting there, and they were basically telling the story of how Dude Perfect came to be. And I think it was Tyler. It was a part that he was talking about, and what he and I get even emotional kind of tell this, because it makes me think about that moment of when I felt like that the idea of the podcast was sort of birthed inside me. And as Tyler was sitting there kind of sharing the parts of Dude Perfect and how they never really kind of dreamed it would be what it would be, I started to get really emotional. And it wasn't even like this part of their story that was super emotional. It was just, and I was sitting there going, what is going on? Like, why am I so emotional
I'm
over this?
an emotional guy, but
I mean, I am. I'm
emotional
unashamedly
over Dude
an emotional guy. And so I remember sitting there going, what is this? Like, why am I getting so emotional about this? And I just felt this strange desire, like, you're going to do this platform, like you're going to have this platform. and which was kind of confusing to me, and because I was like, I don't even know how to make this happen. I don't even know if you're really saying this to me. And then literally about a month later, or a couple weeks later, we went to a man church conference. Our church, Rincon Church of God, sponsor, or men go to a man church conference in Alabama. And there was something said in that meeting about sharing your stories. And it was just, there was a part in those services where your stories became a big part of what they were talking about. And I was just like, okay, Lord, like,
yeah, it kept coming up.
It kept coming up. And then we get back from the man church, and then Pastor Les, who's our pastor, does a series about your story. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on here? Like, it was like, and usually when I know the Lord's speaking to me, it's back to back to back, like it just starts showing up everywhere. And then I had probably, he's probably going to be one of our first guests on the podcast. This guy comes up to me, and he's had radical transformation in his life, an incredible story. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. He's looking for an avenue to share a story.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And then the two guys you can't see right now, Evan and Cody, who are behind the scenes, Pastor Lass comes up to me one day and says, I don't remember which one of you guys it started with, but he said, Cody had just kind of come back in town after being out in California for a little while, surfing and all that kind of stuff. But no, he wasn't really surfing. He was serving the Lord out there.
You can surf and serve the Lord.
Yeah, you sure can. But he came to me and said, I talked to Cody this week, and Cody had some great ideas, and he said something about a podcast. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, like Cody wants to do a podcast, and him and Evan were talking, and I was like, okay. So I told Les that I said, you're not going to believe this. And I know I said, for me, this is a big deal because of all the things I've previously said. And it just kind of went from there. And we started putting some things in motion, and Evan and Cody started working really hard, putting things together, getting equipment in was, these nice microphones and everything you see here, in order to do what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And then we were supposed to record this back in September, but today it's like November the 8th, 2024. We were supposed to record this back in September. Hurricane.
Yeah.
Bumped to October. Hurricane. And so here we are.
Yeah.
Today. So.
Well, and you and I've talked about it, but we get to every fourth week of the growth track at the church. Mm-hmm. We get to, that's the end of the growth track for the 4 weeks. And we get to talk about, our story and kind of watch and listen to other people that are new to our church, that are joining our church. And we get to tell our story, which here at Rincon has been back in 1988 was when we joined the church.
A long time ago.
We were kids. I was 6. You were 7. So our families actually joined the church on the same day. So we get to talk about that, which is my favorite part of Growth Track, is getting to share about it and reflect about what the Lord has done over the last, you're good at math. I'm not. What is that? 30-something years.
26 years.
Really?
Wait.
30.
88 to 28 would be.
Yeah. It's in the 30s.
You put me on the spot.
30-something years.
Yeah, it's up there.
So to be able to think about, what the decision that our parents made when we were so young.
36
and
years.
And how that, thank you. I knew you were going to come up with it. You're good at complex math, not simple math. I knew it was.
I was using my fingers. I don't know if you could see it, but I was.
So, the decision that our parents made to put down roots at Rincon.
Yep.
And not that, we do believe there's something special about this church and the people that God is bringing here, no doubt. And over a long time.
Not to interrupt you, but in that context of what you're talking about, we also share the story of, because we've been here that long, of how we've grown, like physically, numerically, building wise.
Yeah.
To give a context to kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, like we were in what is now Kid City, and that's where we joined the church when we were so young. and then eventually, to go through all the ministries at the church that existed when we were young, youth ministry, and then to get married here and, move away for a while, and then to, God to call us back to Rincon.
Yeah.
And we do believe that we had other plans. We had other intentions. We weren't planning to come back to Rincon when we first got married.
Yeah, not because we didn't want to.
We loved Rincon,
yeah.
but we just didn't think that was part of it. And then to be called back here and now to watch other families,
Yeah.
whether they have young children like our families were, or whether or not they, are in a different stage of life, to be able to watch them do the same thing and say, this is good soil. We want, to kind of partner with you, hear your story, get to know your story, and how many people are walking around that we get to know their story.
Yeah.
Not everybody's, and not, just what they want to share, but to be able to say, gosh, how many more people could hear this and be impacted, their faith be lifted, because, maybe that's not exactly what I've experienced, but I can relate to that. To me, that's what excited me.
Yeah, and we talked about this morning. We would not be who we are if it weren't for Rincon Church of God. I mean, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
The leadership that was here, the youth pastors that we were under, shout out Brett Gerald. And so 100% the ministry opportunities we had here, the involvement we had here, shaped us in ways that we benefit from today as 44 and 43-year-old people.
Yeah.
And I think our desire, through even when we do Growth Track, in week 4, but is that people would have the same opportunity. I mean, Rincon Church of God is a great church. It's great because of who we allow God to be here, and the people that invite, I guess, the Lord in, bring Him in with them every week, and we're so blessed and fortunate to hear, and that's what we want. Is we want people to be able to experience and have the kind of story where God is as much as a part of it as He has been in our lives. And honestly, again, we wouldn't be who we are without that opportunity.
Yeah, and I won't go super in depth, but just to say, like, if the people that wrote the Bible didn't record it or write it down, we wouldn't have those stories. Yeah. We wouldn't know anything about it. But somewhere, somehow, somebody thought enough to say, okay, we got to write this down. And this is kind of the modern version. Like a podcast is now the new way of writing and recording things and saying, okay, let it be told. This is not necessarily just for my consumption or just for me. Maybe it's for someone else or to be shared. And so, I don't know. I just think there's something really, really powerful about being able to do that. And this is for Rincon people primarily, right? This podcast is my understanding. This is for our church.
This is for our church.
For people within our church to give them a platform and an avenue if they want to share.
Obviously, anybody out there in podcast land can listen to it, but this will feature people from our church who have been connected with our church at some point, or a big vital part of our church. We may have, when it allows, like maybe a missionary guest or something like that to tell their story, but they're affiliated with our church. And so, and that's what this podcast is going to be designed to do, to give people those opportunities to. Because here's what I believe, and here's what I've learned. When you are able to speak out loud, and we get into the power of the tongue there, but when I can speak out loud, and I can hear myself say it, and I can say it because it's coming from inside of me, what God has done, where I have been, where I could have been that I wasn't. When I can say those things, it is I love the New Testament when they build the the altars in the wilderness, or they build the pillars for remembrance. You know, in the Old Testament, that's what this is. It is a marker in someone's faith, in someone's journey. When they sit here and they share their story, or ever how that comes out, it is a marker for that person. And it's not just a marker that person will remember 20 years from now, because they said it out loud and they claimed it and they stood on it. It's that for that other person who's going through the same thing, who thought they were all alone, the other person who struggled with homosexuality that has now come back and been delivered, the person who lost a loved one or went through a terrible tragedy, who didn't understand it and walked through that for so long. And we could run the gamut of things there, but that's what I think.
It's kind of like an on steroids version of our Thanksgiving nights, where we are able to give thanks for what has happened in the last year. To me, it's kind of that, and then muddled in with, you can go back farther than that if you want, right?
Yeah.
Can I share this?
I would love for you to share that.
Okay. So this little old plaque, and it even smells old. This lives in my bathroom, my guest bathroom, beside my the sink. And it lives there. It's a poem called The Weaver. It lives there because my grandma also had it beside her bathroom sink, where there was this little fish soap dispenser. Vivid memories.
I remember
of
that,
this
actually.
Soap dispenser with the little pump coming out of the fish's mouth, and she always put water in there, and so the water would squirt on me because she was trying to save the soap. She also had the squishy toilet seat, which I know is weird, and I don't like those. They're terrible.
Very
but
uncomfortable.
That's what the bathroom was like. I'm just trying to set the scene, and then this was on the wall.
I can feel that feeling right now. It's very
It's terrible. It's terrible. Don't have a squishy toilet seat. And then this. And so as a little girl, I would always read this poem every time I would wash my hands after I go to the bathroom at my mom's or my grandma's house. And so when she passed away, we were able to go through her house, and if there was something, that we wanted, we could get it. So I wanted this, and it's this plaque and another little sign that says simply, "When the horse is dead, get off." And I love that, and that's in my house too.
You love that because you grew up with horses.
I did, but I also think it's a great, for me, I need to just shut up. So this is The Weaver, is the poem. So I want to read it. And I was able to speak at my brother-in-law and sister's church a couple of years ago, and was really talking about, knowing and understanding our story. This was 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember. But this poem was really kind of where this came from. So I'll read it. It says, The Weaver. It says, "My life is but a weaving between my Lord and me. I cannot choose the colors. He works steadily. Often he weaves sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent and the shuttles cease to fly shall God unroll the canvas and explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned." And I get choked up because, of course, as a child I read that, but that is totally our story.
Yeah.
And maybe one day we'll share the details, and that's not important. But to be able to say, okay, there's a point, there's a purpose.
Are you getting?
Again, I'm becoming you.
You're becoming me.
There's a purpose, and there's a reason for, again, in this, a weaving, it would, if it's all beautiful and it's all wonderful and it's all joy-filled things, you're missing the pieces that, make it a more beautiful pattern and is a plan that God has. So to me, that's what this podcast is for me, is this poem. So this will go back beside my sink when I get home. But anyway, just wanted to share that.
No, that's really good. And that's probably a good place for us to start wrapping this little pilot episode up. And so what can you expect? Well, stay tuned. There's going to be coming in the future very soon. Different testimonies, different stories that from people that are a part of our church here at Rincon Church of God. And I can't wait for you to hear that. I can't wait to hear a lot of that. I know you can't. Yeah. And so we're looking forward to that, and
we'll just be here,
yeah,
listening and giving people the opportunity to share. Really, is our role, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Just ask it.
Yeah,
okay.
No, we want to have conversations.
Yeah.
It's the living room.
All right.
The Living Room Podcast, where we have conversations about people's lives.
And sweet tea.
And sweet tea. Well, not exactly sure how to end it, but this is a great spot to end it. Thank you for listening and watching, if you are. Have a great day.